So in this video, we're going to do an in-depth walkthrough of the shop floor application. But before we get into it, I want to talk a little bit more about device compatibility, as well as some of the shop floor app settings. So to kick this off, here off to the right, you'll see the shop floor app. I'm going to create a manufacturing order real quick so we can get some tasks in there for our operator Mark. So let's go ahead and do that real fast. Manufacturing order. Okay, looks good. We've got a couple of tasks lined up. We'll go ahead and assign a few more for this overview. Okay, looks good. Now, talking about device compatibility as a starting point, here inside of the app, I'm using an overlay tool, so it gives you a nice flavor of what it would look like. This is a basic smartphone. It's also compatible with tablets. We highly recommend using the shop floor app on smartphone devices and tablets, but it works best on a tablet. And all of these devices should have a camera option to read the QR code for logging in. So in its vertical orientation, it looks a bit like this, yet in its horizontal orientation, it looks like this. Here you can see a list of the tasks with the start button off to the right. Now, if we want to see how it looks inside of, let's say, a tablet, we can use this one. This is what it would look like in a tablet format when it's horizontal. And if we want to make it vertical, it would look a bit like this. So, tablet works best because, it's a lightweight device. You can get them inexpensively. It works in a browser. It's compatible with Chrome and Safari. So really, actually, the floor app itself is more like a compatible browser application for your tablet. So it doesn't require any special downloads. It just requires an internet connection, and you're good to go. Depending on what environment you're at, you can set it up at the workstation and also have the QR code available there for it to be scanned. So that way your operator can put in their PIN code and they're logged into their operator account. So in this demo, before we go into the operations, let's talk first about the shop floor app settings. So there are 4 major settings in the floor application. The first two, first one, these are mainly for any businesses that are okay giving this level of responsibility to your floor operators. These improve a lot of your cost tracking and inventory tracking in real time. And that's why we encourage you to use them if they're applicable to your business requirements. So the first one is asking the consumed ingredient quantities from the operator when a task is completed. So for example, if you're doing a cutting process and you're going to consume wood in that process, you might take 3 meters from the storage, cut it, and then say, as soon as I hit the finish on that option, it'll say how many meters of wood did you consume. I say 3. If the entire process takes, let's say, 10 meters, then I'll have 7 meters left that is planned to be used. And I might use those at different operations. So this also allows you to tie like the consumption at the operation level. Really helpful. It's also good because you can kind of get an idea of how much is being consumed when you look at it historically. Now, at the moment, we don't have a mapped planned material or ingredients to an operation level yet, but this is a good way to kind of at least track that information in real time through the use of the app. And as that is happening, it's actually drawing down inventory. So that way it's making those inventory not available from stock as they're being pushed through the consumption process of the manufacturing itself. This can also be used in case you overconsume. So maybe you have a planned amount, but you had to take an extra meter of wood to do some sort of process. You can record that. And that's quite helpful too, because it will reflect in the final cost of that manufacturing order. And also, you can link it back to where it occurred. So we'll turn that on for now. The second one is ask the quantity of finished products from the operator when a manufacturing order is completed. Now, this isn't a yield type of setting. So just to be clear about that, this is mainly designed for overrun and underrun. So for example, if you're doing maybe process manufacturing of some sort, where you're dealing with maybe volume and weight, maybe you made a little bit more in excess with your planned ingredients, or maybe you made a little less with your planned ingredients. Something spilled on the floor or something. It could be that. But it's not specifically a QA process where you would measure scrap or something like that in case something didn't come out correctly. This is simply just a general output. We'll turn that on as well. I also want to point out about that is that, if you have cases like that where there is quite a lot of variation with the output, this is good because it will capture those costs more accurately for you. And that way, sometimes when you make something, it might be a little bit cheaper or might be more expensive depending on the output of the final good. Now, these next two are just visibility settings, showing the manufacturing order deadline in the floor app, or showing the sales order deadline in the floor app. Now, the first one is show manufacturing order deadline. That will basically be the production deadline that you find on the make screen. The delivery deadline is actually only related to make-to-order manufacturing orders. So if it's not a make-to-order, meaning it's not linked back to sales, then that date wouldn't exist anyway. But let's say, for example, we'll take a sales order and we will put it to a customer. And let's say it's a table. And then if we choose the make to order button, it will push it into the manufacturing queue. And here in the manufacturing queue, you'll see a sales order listed. And in that sales order, there's no information about the delivery deadline, which is supposed to be the 15th of December for that particular sales order. On the manufacturing queue, this sales order number 4-1, which is listed here, will have both a production deadline and a delivery deadline. So the way it works for that setting is in the settings page, when it's toggled on and off. First, I'll turn it on here. Manufacturing order deadline appears. If I turn it on here, if it exists, the sales order deadline will appear. So that's a basic overview of what those settings do and how they look. Let's go back to the main task list and let's talk about what we see here. So the home screen of the shop floor app is basically the task list. This is the tasks you have to do. And you'll also have a link back to the ones you've already completed. But in the tasks to-do list, what is most important to note here is kind of how you can navigate within it. You can either start the tasks like right from the main list, or you can actually open up the task and it will take you further inside to see what is linked to that task, which would be the manufacturing order itself. So taking manufacturing order number 13, we chose a task for manufacturing order 13. So it's one on the top of the list, cutting process table saw. Open it up, manufacturing order number 13. Make screen, we're going to do a side-by-side comparison on how those look together. And all the elements that you see here are also available there. Now there's a couple of notable differences. First off is there are costs of ingredients and costs of operations directly on this screen, which is accessible to a user but not to an operator. So an operator who only logs in here will not be able to see any costs. This is because, of course, you don't want them to know how much it costs to make your products. You don't want them to know the margins or anything of that matter. But the other things that are visible here, especially in the ingredients section, are the colors for the ingredients. You can see that the stock availability is very much related to that. Red for not available, yellow for expected, and green for in stock. These update in real time, just as they would inside of Katana's application. So for example, if this item, the cognac colored paint, is not available and I want to buy it, if I choose the buy option, and let's say I'm buying in 16 units, which is what I need to satisfy my stock requirements, and hit create and close, that's going to turn yellow. So it'll go from red to yellow when I choose this button. Turns yellow here, turns yellow there. So it's currently in an expected state. Now, if you are going to mark that as received, I'll go back into the purchase order that we just created. When that gets marked as received, that will update in real time as well. So now your operator has the information that they need in order to take those off the shelf, because now they're aware that it's in stock. So you always have to tell your operator, hey, look, if it's not green there, it's not available. Now, there are cases, and this might be a little confusing for an operator. The operator might see a manufacturing order and say, well, it's red, but I actually see it over there in the storage. Then there's a good chance they're not doing their processes correctly. The reason why it might be in storage is because it's committed to another manufacturing order that is highest or has the highest priority in the manufacturing queue. So do communicate with your operators that are dealing with ingredient stock and let them know that all of those have to be green in order for you to start the production process. Don't take whatever's available in the storage just because it's there. Run that by whoever's scheduling. There might be a scheduling mistake. So that's how that particular items look. Now, if you've got 50 items of ingredients on a manufacturing order, you can look those up by shortlisting them through the search function. So the search function here, you can type in, let's say, wood, and it will find it for you. And then you can immediately shortcut it from that perspective. Alternatively, and this is where we get into the more useful stuff like barcodes, which I'm going to cover in the barcodes tutorial, there is a camera option. And so you can use the camera to scan barcodes. You assign barcodes to all of your items in inventory, which are used for lookup. And so whenever you have 50 ingredients in front of you and you have some linked barcodes that you can scan, you just scan them and you're good. It will immediately reference the correct material that you're planning to capture from your storage in order to start your manufacturing process or process for that item. In this case, since we're doing cutting, it would be wood. So this is a cutting process at the table saw. Now, whenever you are needing to do any additional substitutions, maybe you have an industry where you can make a substitution on a material, or you need to add something to the ingredients list that doesn't exist on the standard bill of materials, there's an add ingredients option here too. I'll give you one really good example of this. In some cases of custom manufacturing, what companies will do is they'll create a standardized bill of materials, which all items use, but there could be a custom element that comes from the website. So in Katana, actually, and you have to go to YouTube and type in custom make-to-order workflow with Shopify. We use something called metadata, and metadata is captured on the sales order and gets passed to the manufacturing order when you do a make-to-order workflow. And this can provide you some information that is relatable to a custom manufacturing process. But if your bill of materials for the item you sell on your website is different, is standardized, and then the customer can add customized elements, then you could pass that information all the way to the manufacturing floor person. And if the floor person sees the information there, they say, oh, okay, well, I know what I need. I need to add this ingredient in order to get that customization. So that's how it works. You choose the add ingredient option here. You can select something from the list. Maybe I need to use black paint as an extra item. And I need to use a quantity of 1 liter. And you choose add. You can actually put it in your list like so. And if you see that, in this case, going back to the manufacturing order list like that, it will appear on the Katana side as it has been entered by your operator. Very cool stuff. I'll go ahead and remove it for now and take it off the list. This will update. It will update at some point. Demo part doesn't really work for this overlay feature. But anyhow, that's basic overview of the ingredients page. Now, going into the operations section, This is also the same thing that you see in front of you as a Katana user, with the exception that you don't see who the operators it's assigned to are, and also the planned versus actual time spent, as well as cost. Not relevant information. But what you can see here on the left side are the colors. And the colors correspond to the same exact colors that you see here. So for example, not started means it has been assigned to you if you can see it, but it hasn't begun. In progress means you press the start button on the shop floor application, and the timer is counting. Paused means you chose the pause option in the shop floor application, and it will show as a dark orange color. Completed will be green when it's done, and blocked will be red whenever it is been blocked. So how it looks here on the screen, we'll go ahead and just do the first example. We'll choose the start option, and then this will change everything. This will change the operation to work in progress, and it will change the manufacturing order if it's the first operation that has been started to a work in progress. When you are finished with it, going back to those shop floor app settings that we had before, if you choose finish, it's going to ask you what particular materials have you used in this process. I'll go ahead and clear the black paint off the list so we don't have to worry about it. And I'll choose the wood. So for wood, let's say we consumed an expected 15 meters, but we may have consumed, let's say, 10 meters of wood, and didn't consume any cognac paint, but we consumed the black paint for whatever reason. Something that's really cool and worth mentioning here is the add a comment portion. So you can actually add a comment with respect to anytime you might have made a mistake, or maybe there's something important that needs to be said about that operation for that manufacturing order. In this case, I could actually do something like, I could put 15, but comment, I could put, let's say 20, even though over here, the planned quantity is 15. And I could put a comment, accidentally made a bad cut. And then this comment will be applied to that specific operation, which can be used to look up for later. Select finish, and then that operation will be marked as completed. It will update here in just a moment. All right, now that we're updated, this brings us to our next operation that has to be performed on this manufacturing order. This one is the gluing operation, and the difference with this one is it actually has 2 people assigned to it. As mentioned earlier, it's possible to have 2 people assigned to an operation. What does it mean? It means that both of those people can visibly see that task being assigned to them. So how does it work in practice? Well, I'm going to log into Jill's account, which I have on my phone here. And if we look close at the tasks that are assigned to Jill, you can see very closely that it is MO-13 on the 3rd line down. And then this is going to be for the gluing process. This means that this operation is visible to Jill on this phone just as much as it is visible to Mark here for gluing on his phone. Now, if Mark is inside of the application, let's say that Jill decides to start that process. So I'm going to open it up in Jill's phone, and I'm going to actually press the start option for that task. Once it gets started, then it no longer becomes available for Mark to take. As you can see, even though he sees it, he sees that Jill's working on it, so he can't do anything with it. He knows it's yellow, so it's a work in progress. He can still click on it and see inside of it what's actually happening, but it'll be yellow like so as well. But there is no options as you would see before because the task is being done by someone else. Can't take it, can't do anything with it. No big deal, but that's how it works. Now, when we look at the option while Jill is working on the task, she has the option to pause, just as I mentioned earlier. Now, what does that mean for Mark when Jill is about to pause the task? What is he going to see? So if she pauses the task like so, then it goes into the dark orange status. And then it also appears as a dark orange status here as well. But Mark still cannot take it because it's paused and it's already been assigned and taken by her. If he opens it up and he looks at the operations side, he still sees the dark orange color, but he can't do anything with it because the task is being done by someone else. Now, when Jill resumes the process by choosing the resume option, then it will go back to yellow. And then that's how it looks. In the timer, it takes it for the first time to the first pause, and then it starts the timer again, and it adds those times together. So the clock is still going, it's only paused during the time that it's paused. Now, if Jill pauses it once more, then there's another option available called quit this task. And what that does is it frees up the task for somebody else to take. The only people who can take it are the people like it is assigned to, which is Mark and Jill. So if she quits it, it's going to ask, are you sure you want to quit it? I choose quit. Turns gray again. All the time is not even associated with it, so off it goes. Now, why would that be important? The reason why that's important is because if you are running multiple shifts, and let's say Jill came in the morning, did her work for the day, took that task, but didn't actually start it, like start it, she was still in the situation where she could give it away. She can quit the task, and then when Mark comes in to the second shift, he can take it over. Pretty straightforward. Now, what if you, as the production scheduler, the boss, decides that you need to put a block on a manufacturing order for some reason? You can make that decision. Operators can't make that decision today. However, you can. Now, the way you would do that is you would assign a block to that particular task by choosing drop-down and then selecting blocked. What that's going to do, as you just noticed on the right, is it actually remove the task from being visible. So if the task is presently not visible, it cannot be worked on. To unblock it, just change it back to a not started state. Now let's go ahead and complete the gluing task with Jill and get that one out of the way real quick. Okay, so once that has been completed and marked on the Katana side, you'll see the green checkbox and also the time associated with it. The time that's associated with it is the combination. Well, unfortunately, it was quit, so that doesn't count. But any time that it isn't quit, the time clock still goes. But once it quits and it's reassigned, then the clock starts back over. So only the time is captured at from the moment of the time it was assigned to the time it was completed. There is you can't quit a task and then have the timer start from where it left off. It has to start over. So currently, this is the case with Jill, and you can see that the person who completed the task was Jill in this situation, and as a result, it became evident that she was the one who completed it. So for these next two examples, I'll show you a little bit more about not just the consumption, but also the output and the comments that can be associated with that as well. So whenever Mark is going to start on the assembly and chooses the start option here, and then finish, he can then report what it is that he consumed, and he can also add the comment as required for that case. I'll skip it for now. And before we move into the actual last task, I want to show the other part, which is the notes section here. Now, anytime a manufacturing order is issued here on the Katana side with a user, down at the bottom, you will find a section called additional information. This is notes, actually. So I can actually put something here. This note is visible in the floor application. And then once that becomes available, it will appear here. Now what I'll go ahead and do is I'll actually refresh the page so you can see it. This note is visible in the floor application. So in certain cases, since I'm using an overlay tool, this should appear in real time, but since I'm using an overlay tool, it doesn't. And that's basically where you can leave some additional notes anytime you need to communicate with your floor staff about a manufacturing order. Now let's move on to the final task, which is indeed the packaging process. So starting it from this section, I can click the start option and then the finish option. It'll ask me if I consumed additional ingredients. Now remember, anything you add here at that stage gets added to here as well. So I've actually consumed 20 meters of wood, but maybe I accidentally used up 1 additional meter. And say something like needed to cut an extra leg, for example. And then this will go from 20 to 21. So it's kind of adding on top of itself, kind of in the same way that if you hit pause on a task and then start again, it'll just add to the last time it was like so. So when you complete a task and you've consumed materials prior to that, then it's just going to do an adding process. And if you need to look it up, you can choose the scan option too. Now, barcode scanning also works for batch tracking. So if you have batch barcodes, you can do a lookup for the item and then scan the batch barcode to specify the batch that it's reported from. And that's something that we'll also talk about when we go to the barcode scanning parts. Choose next and finish. Okay, looks good. Now that manufacturing order has been completed, and you can see once the order is completed by your shop floor team, anytime you need some information about the notes that they left from the ingredients that were consumed, you can see those notes pull over to this section here. So you can see the note section mark accidentally overconsumed by making something or other. And that will give you a nice indication of information related from the floor level whenever you want to assess, why did we overconsume by 6 meters on this particular manufacturing order. You say, okay, well, I have the notes that I need right there from my team member. And that is an in-depth overview of the shop floor app from the perspective of the operator. I hope that it makes sense and it was very easy to learn from the different cases. You need to keep an eye out for additional features that are going to be supporting this. These would include things like consecutive or sequential operations with dependencies, for example, and also maybe even item images in the future. So there's a lot of really helpful information available as well on our knowledge base, but this should give you a nice flavor of how everything works, so that way you can roll it out to your team.